Greetings, it's Maureen here on my Professor Agent Scully channel. The purpose of these short videos is to introduce concepts, readings, and assignments for my classes at UMass Boston. Please join me on this short learning journey. Let's talk about the case, should we fire him for that post? This video introduction is designed to get you ready to write up the assignment for this case. I like cases that put a question right out there in the title. This is a managerial dilemma. Should we fire him for that post? Next slide. We get into the case analysis by asking 4 questions. Notice that I don't start with the managerial dilemma. I zoom into it from the big picture to the finer details of the case. First, what is the source and context for this case? Second, what is the business? Third, who are the players or stakeholders? Fourth, what is the managerial dilemma? Next slide. First, what is the source and context for this case? This case comes from the March 2016 issue of Harvard Business Review, which was focused on social media marketing. What is social media marketing? We actually have specialized electives on that very topic at UMass Boston, as well as the College of Management's own Digital Media Lab, which is on the cutting edge of best practices. Social media marketing is about connecting to your customers, past, present, and future, through social media platforms. Think of LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and the focus of this case, Facebook. Recognize the car brand? This case is about a Mercedes-Benz dealership, and they certainly hope that you know that design immediately. The idea is to use these social media platforms, next slide, to build a great reputation for your brand, to provide information to your customers by publishing excellent content, to entice them to visit your website frequently, to build a loyal following and repeat customers, and ultimately, of course, to increase sales. It's also a two-way street. Next slide. You're not just transmitting to your customers, you're listening to your customers and learning about what interests them and what grabs their attention. And if you're really using social media marketing well, you're collecting data, noticing patterns, and using these results to refine your marketing strategies next time around, and maybe even refine the product itself. So that's the source and context for this case. Next slide. The second question is, what is the business? Let's wrap our heads around the world of car dealerships so we can really appreciate the managerial dilemma. Next slide. The case features Down City Motors, a car dealership in Charlotte, North Carolina, a fictitious company, but based on realistic details. It's a dealership for Mercedes, BMW, and Range Rover. Car dealerships. What a competitive space. Autotrader.com lists 248 car dealerships, actual ones, within a 50-mile radius of the central Charlotte, North Carolina zip code. 248. And today, car buyers do a lot of their market research and shopping online, even before visiting a car dealership. Which car to buy? Then which dealership to visit to buy it? Next slide. But wait, let's pause to ask about car dealerships. What business are we in? You all recognize that question now. How do dealerships make money? It is not so much from the sale of a new car per se. The profits come from arranging car loans, selling add-ons like accessories or an extended warranty or a fancy sound system, and making monies from cars that customers trade in. If all that goes well, there's $7,000 to $10,000 to be made on the sale of a new car. So a car salesperson wants repeat business and relationships. Come back, trade in your car, get a new one, trust me for the extras, come back again. A car salesperson builds on the reputation that the overall car company has created and then adds their own personal spin. Mercedes-Benz has a huge following on Facebook, more than 20 million followers. But that's hardly a way to build customer relationships, so they have more fine-tuned groups as well, maybe by the class of car or by the local region. They even have special events. Special events? That's right, Mercedes sponsors fashion events and luxury events to build that kind of association in buyers' minds. This is a luxury product. How does a car salesperson add their own spin? Here's a little video clip of a salesman from a real Mercedes dealership from Durham, North Carolina, taking a spin and presenting Queen of Wines.
My name is Greg. I'm the marketing director of Mercedes-Benz of Durham. I'm here today with Lori Levisk of Queen of Wines, and we're driving around in this beautiful 2017 Mercedes-Benz C300.
I'm French, 100% French, was born in the Alps, and I have spent already close to 9 years in the United States, and I'm loving it. And 2 years ago, I decided to launch this business, Queen of Wines, and the mission of this business is to bring here what I call the gem wines from France. Durham is really a very different community from anywhere else in the Triangle. I think it's becoming really hype. Lots of amazing restaurants, lots of amazing businesses, galleries, and just great people living here. There is a 3-tier system in America where we source, import, and distribute the wine, and then our retail partners do sell it to end customers. But we partner with them to create amazing events where we tell the stories about the wineries, we explain what the wines are all about, building the community around the love and passion for wine.
As you watched the video, you might have been asking, why Queen of Wines? At his car dealership, this salesperson probably believes that his customers want a certain kind of lifestyle. Fine wines, fine cars. Next slide. Car companies want to know what their customers want and like, not just about cars, but about life. Mercedes-Benz created what's called a market segment, a special subset of its market that they wanted to learn about. They invited a group of people ages 20 to 39, about 200 of them. They called them Generation Benz, to tell the Mercedes-Benz company, what are we interested in? This image is from the company's so-called Grow Up campaign for, quote, people caught between the coolness of adolescence and the squareness of adulthood, unquote. So the Mercedes company does all this market research and all this branding, and the dealership hopes to get people in the door, and the salesperson hopes to make a sale. Why am I giving you all this background? Well, to really feel and understand what is at stake in this case, you have to see the bigger picture, and why one wayward social media post that runs counter to all this messaging could be a big deal. So let's get to the case. Next slide. Now it's time to ask, who are the players or the stakeholders? Next slide. Kenton is the top salesperson at Down City Motors. His boss, Tyson Beck, the manager for sales at the Mercedes dealership, thinks Kenton is great. Kenton helps him make good sales numbers. Kenton knows his customers and wants the brand to signal luxury. Kenton was frustrated and he made this sarcastic post to Facebook. So thrilled that Down City went all out for the most important Mercedes launch in years. Nothing says luxury like plastic tablecloths and soda pop. Plastic tablecloths and cups of soda are hardly on par with the Queen of Wines approach to selling Mercedes. That social media post, really the opposite of positive social media marketing, is at the heart of this case. Why did Kenton make this post? Maybe he's frustrated and he actually is trying to provoke, to get the attention of management and prod them to up their game. Or maybe he was just posting for his friends outside of work, like, hey, this is a day in my life. Or maybe he actually hasn't separated his friends from his work friends, and he has both on Facebook. So he does have loyal customers among his Facebook friends, and maybe that's part of his relationship building. So let's think, if I'm a loyal customer and I saw Kenton's post, what might I think? I might think that Kenton is cool. And at least someone in the company understands why I also found that launch to be so ridiculous. So, hey, good, I'll keep working with Kenton. Or conversely, I might think, Kenton seems pretty disgruntled. And I'm a business person too, and this tells me this dealership may be in trouble, so maybe it's time I look elsewhere. Here I'm taking the employee perspective and the customer perspective. But remember that Harvard Business Review is generally about taking the manager's perspective. And this case is about a managerial dilemma. So let's meet the manager. Next slide. Susanna Winslow is the general manager of Down City Motors, again, a fictitious character. She is the decision maker in this case. She is the one who ultimately has to answer, should we fire him for that post? I'd like to pause for a moment. I put brackets here because I want us to pause to consider why having a woman protagonist in this case is significant. Harvard Business School produces about 80% of the teaching cases that are used in business schools all around the world. They curate a collection of over 10,000 cases. Very few of these cases feature women as protagonists, only about 10% of all the cases. Why does that matter? Well, as thousands of business school students like you, the managers of the future, study these cases, they may form subconscious images in their mind of what a manager looks like. If they only read cases, 90% of them, that feature male protagonists, well, manager becomes subtly linked to being male. That may start to affect how we do business, who we trust, who we hire, who we think is just right for the job, who we promote, who we listen to. In 2014, Harvard Business School Dean Nitin Noria pledged to address gender inequality. He pledged that 20% of the new cases written from 2015 to 2020 would feature women. That would yield about 250 new cases featuring a woman manager from over a total of 1,000 new cases written in that time period. It's a small step, but a step in the right direction, and that project is still underway. Meanwhile, what about us as readers of cases? Whenever we read cases, we can start to flex our own imaginations about who is a manager. What does that look like? In our classrooms at UMass Boston, we are the diverse leadership for business for the future. Let's picture ourselves in these managerial roles. For this case, I'm going to use my imagination to picture a woman of color as the manager of the car dealership. Next slide. Meet Janel Ross, the real-world CEO of Bob Ross Auto Group in Ohio. The dealership was founded by her father in 1979, and it was the first Black-owned Mercedes dealership in the U.S. So, as the daughter of the founder, she took over the business, and in a way her story echoes the story of the fictitious Susanna in this case, who is now running her father's business and hoping to take it over in 5 years. Note that only 1% of all the car dealerships in the U.S. are run by Black women. However, here's a more promising and interesting fact. Next slide. Is that the group with the fastest growing rate of founding new businesses as entrepreneurs is African American women. This table is from a report commissioned by American Express, who of course wants to push its credit card products for entrepreneurs. The table in this report shows the share of all women-owned businesses that are owned by women of color. African American women own 2,402,600 businesses in the U.S. Latinas own over 2 million businesses. Asian American women own over 1 million businesses. Native American Alaska Native women own 169,500 businesses. And Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander women own 36,800 businesses. So my point is, let's conjure in our minds lots of varied images of who is the manager, who is the owner, who is the CEO. With more images in our mind, we contribute to making change in the business world. So that sidebar was important to me, and now I'm ready to turn back to the case and our fourth question. Next slide. What is the managerial dilemma here? Well, the managerial dilemma is contained right in the title of the case, should we fire him for that post. But notice how we didn't just jump right in and start there with that question. When I teach this case in class, people tend to shout out, yes, fire him, no, don't fire him. It's fine to have a gut reaction, but it's important to read this case more fully, to understand the dilemma, the context, and then to make a reasoned decision. We have to work our way toward the answer. Firing a top salesman is costly in terms of money and in terms of lost customer relationships. Not firing an employee who badmouths the company might set a negative example for others. Either decision could hurt morale. Susanna could use a stakeholder map to consider whose opinions and reactions she should take into account. Next slide. Kenton has power as a top salesperson. Losing him would be a big loss. The person with obvious formal power, her father and as the owner and founder and as her boss, wants her to fire him. Tyson Beck does not want her to fire him. He does not want to lose Kenton. And Tyson has a lot of power to affect the company bottom line. He's their manager for sales for the Mercedes line. Greg Croucher is an example of a stakeholder who is not even in the company. He is the contact at BMW. Those are the other cars sold at the dealership. He is watching. And he comments that he was relieved that this didn't happen with the BMW launch, this negative post. Susanna has to consider how to keep his goodwill because his source of power is that he provides a critical resource for her dealership, the BMWs. It's a dilemma because there is not one easy answer. There is not one right answer. As you read the case, you will see that Susanna gets input from a lot of people. That's good managing, good listening. And the case is followed by comments from two experts, an employment lawyer and a social media marketing executive. Next slide. For the assignment, I want you to select the decision that you think is right, considering all the information. Again, remember that there is not one right answer. Even the two experts at the end of the case disagree. These are the choices here for answering the question, should we fire him for that post? Yes, fire him. No, don't fire him. And I give you a midway choice, give him a warning. What I want you to do is select your decision, and then that is when things get interesting. The key to thinking about this case is to anticipate. How will the different players or stakeholders react? Why? What are their interests? And what kind of power do they have to back me up or to make my life difficult, depending on whether they agree or disagree with my decision? Any decision in business can have consequences, and mixed consequences at that. A manager makes a tough decision and one player is pleased while another player becomes demotivated. Who will react and how? Next slide. So let's go back to the stakeholder map. Here, as you see, I have added a fourth column labeled stance. That is their stance of that stakeholder toward the decision. I fill in that column with whether the stakeholder is likely to be a blocker or a supporter of my decision. So here I filled it in as if my decision was, yes, fire him. See, that's in the heading at the top of the table. So this is a table of likely reactions to that decision. So really the starting point is my decision, then I track the reactions. And here, there are 2 likely blockers and 2 likely supporters, and they all matter. But at least with this table, my head is clear about what is going on. When you are a manager, I encourage you to sketch out stakeholder maps like this one. Next slide. We're much more accustomed to what's shown at the top here, spending a lot of time arriving at a decision. That's certainly very important. But life as a manager is often about explaining a decision once it is made, anticipating reactions, having responses ready. So for the assignment for this case, you're going to take something different as an approach. You will start with a decision. Yes, fire him, or no, don't fire him, or give him a warning, any decision. And then the assignment will be about how you argue for that decision. So the decision is the starting point, not the end point. I'll give you a specific format for spelling out your argument, so more details on the actual specifics of the assignment will be forthcoming in emails or in class or in another video. This video was meant to take you through the broad analysis of the case. And yes, I use this case as a vehicle, pun intended, for covering a wide range of issues, from appreciating social media marketing, to remembering to ask, what business are we in? To recognizing women, and particularly women of color, in leadership roles, to mapping different stakeholders, and ultimately to dealing with a managerial dilemma. That's all for now. Thanks for joining me on this learning journey, and as always, be in touch if you have any questions.